Super. Thank you, Vincent, and thank you, team, for giving a chance to speak about our latest work here today. And my name is Safakath. I'm a research scientist here in KAUST, doing mainly ultrafast spectroscopy on organic semiconductors. And today I'm going to talk about the importance of ionization energy offset in binary and ternary organic solar. So what I mean by ionization energy is the gap between HOMO of the donor acceptor in organic solar cell. So I will tell you why we are largely neglecting the electron affinity, which is very important factor in the fullerene organic solar cell, and why it's important in non-fullerene organic solar cell. The IE offset is more important. So I divided my talk into two for the next 25 minutes, 3 parts. So I'll talk about some basics of organic solar cell so that everyone can be on the same page. And also I'll be talking about some intrinsic efficiency limitation in binary organic solar cell, showing our a paper published in last year. And finally, I'll be talking about our current work, which is in submission, talking about the impact of this IE offset in a ternary organic solar cell where you have 2 acceptors. And when you mix 2 acceptors, what happened in the charge generation? So this is the story of today. And I start with this NREL famous chart. It's not the updated one, probably the last year one. The region which we are focused is here in the red region. Now the efficiency is reaching around about 19%. That means that the OPV organic solar cell of a potential can be a potential contributor to the energy crisis of the world. So talking about organic solar cell and how it is different from inorganic semiconductors. So it's basically when a light absorbed by a photon absorbed by an organic semiconductor due to the intrinsic property such as permittivity is very low. It forms an excited state, bounded excited state, which we call singlet exciton, which is basically very tightly bounded, called Frankel type. And because of this very tightly bounded nature of the organic semiconductor excited state, singlet excited state, we cannot simply separate them in the presence of, with the help of the thermal energy. So we need some extra force to separate them, to drive them and free them to have free charges. For that, we use a second material in organic solar cell, which we call acceptor. So in organic solar cell, we use 2 systems. One is donor, another one is acceptor. And in inorganic solar cell, due to the high permittivity, the Coulomb force is low, and we can basically easily separate them in inorganic semiconductors. So in organic semiconductor, we're gonna coin a term called charge transfer state. It's gonna be, I'm gonna use this term in most of my slide. So when you put the second material to the first material, the donor acceptor mixed together. So when you have the electron or hole, or both are in 2 materials, material 1 and material 2, the state we call, but still bounded, the state we call charge transfer type. I'm going to explain this in detail. So, so when a semiconductor material, organic semiconductor material 1, let's say donor absorbs light, it forms singlet exciton, in general exciton, and these excitons move to the interface to get separated, and then there will be charge transfer state formation, the electrons in the material 2 and the holes in the material 1, and still it's bounded, but a little bit more separated. This state we call charge transfer state. This is an important intermediate in organic solar cell, at least most of the organic solar cells. And finally, we will have charge separation and we will have current. Nice. So again, to put them in a dynamic picture, so these processes are happening in a wide range of time scale, from few tens of femtoseconds to several microseconds, from exciton generation, CT state formation to charge separation, to charge extraction. Along with these processes, there are some unwanted processes which is still happening, like CT state recombination, free charge recombination, and also sometimes triplet formation. So it's like a wide range of time domain. We need to process this. We need to probe these processes. We need a technique which cover basically all the time scale. And one of the technique is transient absorption spectroscopy, which I'm going to introduce you today in detail. So what's transient absorption spectroscopy? Before that, I want to show you the steady state spectroscopy. It's basically measure the molecules absorb ground states. But in transient absorption spectroscopy, or also called pump probe spectroscopy, we measure the absorption of excited state species instead of ground states. That's why we call pump probe spectroscopy, because we pump with the light and excite the ground state to an excited state, then send a white light to probe the excited state. And these excited states are transient species, and that's why this is also called transient absorption spectroscopy. Okay, and I want to show you the lab. So what we can do here at KAUST, this is our lab, and we can basically measure wide spectral and temporal range from sub 20 femtosecond to 300 microsecond and different conditions. So if you'd like to get your samples measured in this technique, you could contact us. We will be happy to collaborate with you guys. So now the part 2, let me discuss with you some of the findings we reported last year in this paper. Here we mainly talk about importance of an optimum HOMO offset, ionization energy offset, to have a proper charge generation. There are many reports saying that you can have almost zero offset charge generation in non-fullerene organic solar cell. So we're gonna discuss this next 10 minutes. As I said, in organic solar cell, one of the key intermediate state is the charge transfer state. Forming the charge transfer state is important. So we normally will have some voltage loss because of the LUMO offset and also HOMO offset. But in non-fullerene organic solar cell, we showed that the LUMO offset can be neglected, but we have to really consider the HOMO offset. To prove and check this, we select whole range of available state-of-the-art material systems and performed multiple spectroscopy and also device characterization to check and probe the importance of IE offset. So we measured IE values by using ultraviolet photoelectron spectroscopy UPS, also confirmed with PISA technique. I arranged the HOMO values in such a way that it keep increasing from low to high. And I arranged the LUMO values random, so there is no order here on the top. And we found that keep increasing the gap between the donor HOMO to the acceptor HOMO, you can increase the charge generation to a certain level, then it's becomes saturated. So we measured the HOMO values of neat material, not the blend. And we find that putting the HOMO offset of the neat material system and plot the IQ, internal quantum efficiency, you can find a nice correlation that it keep increasing to a certain level, then it become like kind of saturated. So this is the main finding. So why the IE offset is important than electron affinity? What happened to the excitations generated in the donor? How they produce charges in non-fullerene, low band gap non-fullerene organic solar cell? The first answer is the phosphorescent energy transfer. The energy transfer, the emission of the donor, which is in the shaded region, in here is DR3, and in here it is PM6. And yeah, and the emission of the donor material actually nicely overlap the absorption of the acceptor, which is like one of the primary conditions for energy transfer. And we find that the energy transfer is highly efficient in these systems which outcompete the electron transfer. So once you have energy transfer, all the excitation from the donor material move to the acceptor material, then the only one way to produce charge is to do the whole transfer. That's why the I offset is important than the E offset. I'm going to show you the coming slide. So during the P3HT PCBM time, when you excite P3HT, we mostly, that's the main photon absorber in P3HT PCBM solar cell. We get an electron transfer, fine, because there will be no energy transfer because of the absorption. This is a high band gap material compared to P3HT. And we will have also, we can have a whole transfer from PCBM as well. So we simply translated this information to the NFA system, but actually we showed that it's actually not correct. We will have energy transfer dominated. I cannot say that there is no electron transfer, but it's outweigh the electron transfer, energy transfer. So all the excitation, or most of the excitation, move to the NFA, and then only one way to do the charge transfer is whole transfer. So showing again, so the excitation, the energy transfer means you just moved all the excitation to this side, and the only one way to do charge transfer is the whole transfer from NFA to the donor, because there will be no excited species available for the donor material. No singlet exciton available for the donor material. So we probe this via ultrafast spectroscopy. I'm trying to simplify this message from this very complex spectra. I selected three systems. One has low IE offset, and one has high IE offset, and one has medium IE offset. And you can see two shaded area, the pink color and blue color. Pink color is the spectra we obtained at 400 femtosecond, and the blue one, the spectra which we obtained at 300 picosecond, which is the typical time for CT or even free charge generation. And we excited the donor material. The x-axis is the electron volt. I'll show you in the next slide. You excite the donor material. This is kind of photo bleach of the donor material. Looks like the absorption region of the donor material, but you also see the absorption region of the acceptor material. But you are not exciting the acceptor material here. This simply means that if you see the photo bleach in the acceptor without exciting the acceptor, means that there is an energy transfer. And second part is, you see the blue shaded area is very low here compared to the pink, and it's getting a little bit better, and it's much better here. It depends on the IE offset. You have high IE offset, that means that you have more chances for charge generation. If there is low IE offset, basically you are not having enough charges generated in the system, which basically explain the performance dependence on the IE offset. Talking about the acceptor excitation, we also get similar, but there will be no energy transfer in this case, and you will have very similar spectra at 300 picosecond, which means that irrespective of the excitation, you will have a final product looks same, which means that again everything happens from the acceptor to the whole transfer to the donor. So even though we know that kind of optimal value for each system, but to quantify that, we did error function fit and giving a bias potential and disorder parameter, energetic disorder parameter, and we found that around 0.5 is the best value for OPV to have. IE offset is the best for OPV to have maximum charge generation. There are exceptions like PM6 or Y6, because Y6 is very famous for producing intrinsic charge generators, so we cannot really consider that compared with the other NFAs. And so summarizing this part, so what we learned from here is when you excite a singlet of the donor, you will have when you excite the donor, you will have a energy transfer to the acceptor, then we'll have CT state formation, we will have free charges. Okay. And what about the donor acceptor interface? What happens there? So we propose a model here. So this is basically an energy level diagram, typical OPV. And we propose due to the quadrupole moment of the acceptor material, there can be a energy level bending at the interface, which actually compensate the IE offset. So if you have a low IE offset, and if you have a high energy level bending, basically it flips up and it gives very negative value for the offset. I'm going to explain this to you now. So let's consider the high offset system, like high performance system. And even though the band bending is there, sorry, energy level bending is there, still within the allowed transition range. So you can have we will have some voltage loss, but we can have a charge transfer, Hall transfer. But in the case of very poor performing one, the IE offset is low, because the IE offset is somewhere here. And if you have energy level bending, it goes up because of the quadrupole moment. And basically you cannot have a charge generation in this way in the poor performance solar cell. In the case of kind of medium offset system, you will have kind of a barrierless charge generation, but again, it depends on the disorder of your energetic disorder of your material. If you have very less disordered material, then okay, we can have a charge generation without any issue. But normally we will have an issue with continuous energy level bending like this. So normally it's not like a one line, it's like a multiple line. So if you have a high offset, then we can get all the lines inside this region, and you can have maximum IQ. In this case, this top part is lost. So if you have a low offset, we will have some loss from the top part, which energetically not possible to have charge generation. And this is our proposed model. There is also a recent paper published in Nature Communication last month, talking about the vacuum level bending instead of energy level bending, which is also one possible explanation for this kind of IE offset dependence. But in general, they have the IE offset dependence is real. So summarizing the part one, before going to the next part, optimizing the fret efficiency is important, and also we need to maintain a minimum ionization energy offset. And to have band bending, we need to have an interface with a strong quadrupole moment to facilitate CT state dissociation, and reducing the interfacial disorder parameter is good for minimizing the energy losses. And also, of course, increasing the absorbance of material is a good way to also improve the external quantum efficiencies. Nice. Going back to, so in the ternary solar cell, in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to talk about the ternary solar cell, where we use one polymer donor to non-fullerene acceptors, a low band gap non-fullerene acceptor, and we want to see which offset, which material takes the lead of the charge generation. Is the material which has more incondent, or the material which is more deeper in the IE value? So the ternary concept is, okay, when you have three components together, we can basically harvest more light so that we can increase the efficiency. So what's the role of IE offset here, and how do we choose the third material to have maximum absorbance and also have a maximum charge generation? So in this case, we selected PM6 as a donor material, and IICO and IICO4F plus IT4F as well as a ternary systems, and we use COI DFIC, a medium offset material, small molecule, as a third component. And you can see the absorbance here. And again, one could expect the nice energy transfer because of the PL overlap of the PM6 with the acceptor material. In the case of IT4-based ternary, we observed very high efficiency. And when you add IICO, it didn't work well. Of course, we can say that its IE offset is low, and IICO4F, it's kind of medium. But when you make a PM6, the third material binary, it kind of a medium performing one. So why the IICO is not working, even though it has a bit of co-height there? So this we're going to examine in the coming slides. As I said before, the energy transfer is very efficient in the system as well. This is the probe. As you can see, the steady state DL spectra itself shows the ternary material has an emission peak here, which is the emission of the acceptor when you excite the donor. Donor emission is somewhere here, but you will see the emission from the acceptor in all three cases, which means that energy transfer is high in the system as well. So what happens here, when you excite the donor material, it creates excitons, and it does energy transfer to both NFA material, depending on the overlap of the material systems. And then we will have a Hall transfer or charge transfer via Hall transfer from these two systems. So first we started with the transient absorption spectroscopy, and we found that energy transfer is efficient in all three systems. Okay, even though this is a complex slide, I can tell you this, we excite PM6. So we should expect in general the singlet of PM6. But you can see that when I plot the singlet here, singlet of PM6 matches here, but the blend spectra, the T1 is the ternary blend spectra, shows a peak here, which matches with the IT4 and co-height singlet peak, which means that the singlets actually generated in the acceptor, not in the donor. That shows ultrafast energy transfer, like in the case of binary. This is the same for all three cases. So the next thing is, okay, there is efficient energy transfer. So what about the charge generation or Hall transfer? So in the case of the IT4-based solar cell, which performs very nice, 14% efficiency, we found that it forms, it has enough charges, even though at few nanoseconds. That means that it creates enough long-lived species, which we can generally assign to the charges. You can see that the blue and the black, that's the 1 picosecond and 6 nanosecond spectra. They are like not much lost in here. But when you check for the other two systems, you can see that the photo bleach is heavily gone, which means that we lost most of the excited species in few nanoseconds, which is not good for an ideal solar cell. It's again, we can relate into the charge generation, and we propose here that when you excite, when you have two materials together, they can kind of forms together, and they change the IE offset together. So when you have a deeper IE offset material, it goes close to the deeper IE offset material, but still you will have a low IE offset here. This we proved by making an IICO-based solar cell by adding more IT4 of content, and which in general, when it is a low IT4 of content, it didn't work, but when you keep adding the IT4 of content, it started working. So again, here also the energy level bending is the bottleneck, even though when you have two systems together, they have a combined or a weighted average IE offset. But in this case, it's still good enough because the IT4 of content is high, so weighted average IE offset is still high. But in the case of IICO, even though you have a co-height is a decent offset material, but the amount is low, so the average weighted offset is very low still. But that's why the slight improvement in the performance as well here. So in this case, again, very similar, it didn't improve well. But to prove our concept that there is an average I offset controls the efficiency. So we changed the donor acceptor, acceptor 1 to acceptor 2 ratio instead of 0.10% of co-IT to adding more co-IT to the poorly performing IICO, the panel B. You can see that when you have a less co-IT, the external quantum efficiency is low, but when you have more co-IT, it increases, and even the part where IICO absorb, which means that there is a charge generation from IICO side. So one could argue that, okay, IICO and co-IT very similar absorption region, so maybe this improvement is coming from co-IT material itself. To double check that, we selected the bad solar cell, even the T2, which is with IICO, and we added IT4, which has completely different absorption region compared to IICO. And you can see that in the ternary system, there is no current, photocurrent in the region of 800 to 900. And when you keep add more IT4 of content from this yellow to red, you can see that there is a rise in this region, which is not coming from IT4F, because this is not the region where IT4F absorbed. So that's why we proposed a model that it's actually average weighted I offset matters in the ternary organic solar cell. So summarizing this, so complementary absorption normally we consider as one of the big thing in the ternary solar cell, but that's not only the main criteria to design the ternary organic solar cell. We also need to consider the energetics. Plus, if you have a bad solar cell, we don't have to invent a new acceptor. We can basically tune the bad acceptor with the nice acceptor having deeper HOMO value so that we can improve the quantum efficiency. With that, I want to thank you, my group in KAUST, and also Max Planck Institute for the theoretical support. And of course, thank you for listening to my talk.